Hi, I'm Jake, and I like to recreate cool effects. Basically, it's my way to learn industry-leading software like After Effects and now Cinema 4D. In this class, we will create this effect while getting to know Cinema 4D in process. This VFX shot is inspired by the movie Justice League Snyder's Cut. We will go step by step, so don't worry if you are completely new to this software. I'm making my classes accessible as possible to any student with any level of knowledge. I'll show you a few great tips on how to fix common issues. I'll be happy to see you in my class as also your result after following all the steps. So, let's get started. In this part of the class, I'm going to show you which tools we could actually try to use to get this effect and what kind of problems we could run into. By the way, all of what I'm going to show you in this part of the class, you don't need to repeat. I just want to show different approaches to this effect, which didn't quite work, but maybe some of these techniques will be useful for your other projects. And after this, I'm going to show you the proper way and the tools which I've used to finally get the effect which you saw in the preview. So if you want to make this effect without any issues, you can just jump to the next part of this class. So first of all, I've created a plane just by clicking here and rotate it to 90 degrees. And we have some deformations. So first thing which you could try is formula, because it really resembles the effect which we could see in the preview. Drop into the plane like this, left mouse click and drop into the plane. We can see this kind of formula and we can change to X radial and see this kind of effect. We want to do is to increase the segments. Basically, if I show you in display here, we can change the display of our plane. We can see actually the polygons. And if we increase these segments, we will increase the number of these polygons. So now as you can see, we have a lot of polygons, which means that we have this smooth kind of effect. And why I didn't use the formula? Because to control this effect, you need to change the formula itself. It's pretty intuitive because you can just play around with these values and see that this value is clearly a mount. How this effect works. Let's leave it at 2. And now let's change this value. Let's set it to 1. And as you can see, this value basically represents how big is distance between the waves. So if we set this to higher number, we will see a lot more waves. In our case, we would want to go to fall off. Here we can change to sphere. In this way, we would set where this ripple effect will be. It's already animated and it goes wrong way. So here in the time, we can multiply -1, which means that it will reverse the time. And it already looks a bit better. And maybe this we want to decrease. So here's the problem with this kind of approach. You would want to animate the ripple go out as well as to slow down. Let's try to slow down. So let's create a keyframe. Keyframe is basically the point in time which remembers the value. In our case, this formula. If we move time cursor to 25 frame and set it to time multiply to 0 and set a keyframe, it will basically stop the animation. And here's the first problem with this. If we move this keyframe to 20 frames, you would see that it isn't smooth stop, which is really bad for our effect because we want this ripple effect to eventually stop, but smoothly. So this is why it didn't work for me. Just because I couldn't control this effect without super good knowledge of this formula. And for me, it's much easier to control the animation with the sliders as well as draw a spline of the animation to go faster and then slower, which I will show in the next part of this class. Let's also look at other method. Left mouse click here and hold. And one of the approaches is collision. You can just drop this effect into plane. So how you would work with this collision, you would need to create something to collide with your surface. So let's create a sphere and make it smaller. We can go to object here and set radius to smaller value, like 50. So to make this collision effect to work, we need to go to colliders and drop sphere into collider. And as you can see, we already have some effect here. So what we can do is to select our sphere and just move around. We can create this bulge kind of part of this effect. But the problem with this, but once we get to render, here are my first attempts, you can clearly see that we have some jiggle and animation. it really doesn't work good with the dynamics, as you can see. Because even if we really try to create a new curves, which could resemble the final part of our effect, but once we get to render an animation itself, as you can see, we can still run into these weird jiggle parts of the effect. And we can even run into problems like this. So this is why we are going to go and use MoGraph effector, which called plane. This effect seems to work reliable, so if we drop into plane, we can actually manipulate our geometry in the safest way possible. From my research and experience, this plane deformer can do exactly what we want, and we have a lot of settings which allows us to control it in the way which we want. By the way, you could try even displacer and drop into plane and set shading to the some kind of noise, like custom noise. And with the displacer, we can actually try to make this bulge part like this. But as you can see, if we would try to animate strength, it moves all of our surface back, which really not what we want. So let's not waste any time, and I'm gonna show you the proper way to create this effect using the MoGraph plane effector. I'll see you in the next video. First thing which I want to say that I'm using After Effects as my primary software. So I believe that this effect can be achieved in different ways in Cinema 4D by experts in this software. And I'm gonna show you which technique I've used to get this effect. So I'm using Cinema 4D R19, but I believe this effect can be achieved even in the older version of Cinema 4D, because we are going to use built-in plugins, which is included in basic Cinema 4D. So first of all, we want to create a new plane. Just left mouse click here and select a plane. Let's rotate it. You can click on this rotate tool and just rotate. Hold shift on keyboard so it will stick to 90 degrees like this. Now we can select this plane here, add a bit more segments. I'll set mine to 150 and 150. So basically, if we go into display shading lines, you can see that we have a lot more polygons to work with. So in this effect which I've created, our effect is containing three parts. This shockwave motion, like ripple effect on the water, as well as a displacement here. As you can see, it's not smooth, it has a little displacement. And also this bulge part. So this is what we are going to make right now. And later we are going to make this broken part. By the way, it's separate scene, but we will stick together in seamless way. So now let's create a shockwave part. Go to MoGraph, effector, plane. Just drop it in here. Let's go to parameter and set this to 3. And this is to 0. And if we go to deformer and set it to point, you can see that we have sticking out to the right. So now we can go to fall off and set it to sphere. So now if we zoom in using the scroll on the mouse, you can see this already some kind of shockwave. By the way, you can hold Alt key on keyboard and click on scroll mouse to move around your scene, or just using these buttons here. So we've set it to sphere. And now let's set scale to 150 to see better this effect. And cool part that we can draw some lines here in this spline. Just hold Control key on keyboard and click here to create first keyframe. Then hold Control once again to create another keyframe. And let's draw a pattern something like this. Just remember to hold Control to create new keyframe and not keyframe point. And if you want to replicate exact same pattern as I have here, you just click here at the beginning, here at these 2 points, as you can see, here a bit between these 2 lines, and about here to create another shockwave. And here let's set maybe here. And as you can see, now we already have this kind of shockwave. And with this offset value, we can control this animation, as you can see. Set it to 50 and scale, let's set it to 100. And let's maybe add some material to this plane so we could see the final result already. So you can double click here to create new material, or click create new material, then double click here And let's disable this color and enable transparency. Here we can select just glass preset. And here at reflectance, we can select this specular tongue. And let's apply to our plane. Now if we click here to render view, we cannot see anything because we don't have any light in our scene. So now let's add some background. So I didn't have a quality HDRI map for this effect. And I'm gonna show you how you can do this even if you don't have it. So what you can do is to select this plane, left mouse click and hold, select plane, rotate it. We will use it as a background. Let's even call it background. Just select it and press return on keyboard. Let's name it BG. And let's create material for this. Double click here to create a new material. Double click here. And let's set it to luminance, only luminance channel, because this will gonna light our scene as well. So click here to add a texture. This image will be provided in resource tab to this class. Just select it and click open, click no, and close it. And now we can apply this material to our background. So now we already see it. So we need this material to apply it properly. And this is why we need to go to object. We need to set exact same dimensions as our picture. So if you didn't use the same picture as I did, you just need to know this resolution. So let's apply these numbers to our BG. So width I'm gonna set to 6960 and height to 4940. Segments we can set to 1. And now as you can see it's too big, so let's play with our coordinates. First of all, we need to set it further away. I'm gonna set to 365, so it will not run across our effect. In Y, let's move it over in X-axis, and let's make it a lot smaller because we don't see any details. So if you used your own image, just play with the scale values so it will fit in your screen. I know my values, this is why I've put it here 0.15 and here 0.1, because I already did this effect. But you can play around so it would fit your scene better. I also gonna create a new camera. You can click here to create a camera. And I'm gonna make sure that I've set at the right angle as I've used in my video. If you are following with the same footage which I provided, you just can type these numbers here. And if we click here, we can watch from this camera view. We can actually add here a Cinema 4D tag, protection tag. So we didn't accidentally move our camera. So let's click render view. And we have a bunch of problems. First problem is that our plane doesn't have any thickness to it. So there is a little trick how you can add a little thickness to our plane. You just need to go to simulate, cloth surface, and click on it. A new version of Cinema 4D, it could be in character or in somewhere else. Just click on these menus and just find this cloth surface. So let's drop our plane into cloth surface. Let's apply this material to cloth surface and let's select it and make a little changes. Let's go to object and here thickness, let's set it to 1 centimeter. So as you can see, we already have some changes and let's see the result. And as you can see, it looks a lot different and this is more proper look of the glass with the thickness. And now as you can see, we have this completely black parts of the image. This happens because in the background we have just a plane, and at the other side, if we don't choose this camera, we have nothing. Here is completely dark scene. So this is why we need to click here, hold, and select sky object to fill our scene with the light. We can just simply add this material to our sky. Let's set it below. What you can do is to select this material and go to coordinates and rotate it a bit, maybe to 52. And here let's set it to 8 and render one more time. As you can see, it's a lot more brighter and we have a proper reflection of our road. This is already looks pretty good. And now let's animate our shockwave effect.